Since 1934, Iowa's farmers have turned to the Iowa Farm Bureau spokesman as their trusted news source. Now, the Spokesman Speaks. Listen in and hear from leading experts on topics important to farmers and agriculture. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to our August 12th edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. I'm Andrew Wheeler, and in today's episode, we're sharing some valuable information for livestock farmers across the state. First, we'll bring on B.J. Brugman of Distynct, an innovative, internet-based, smart alarm system for livestock farms. And later in the episode, we'll talk with Jamee Eggers, a Marshall County farmer and longtime ag industry leader who's using her extensive experience to help interested Iowa farmers comply with California's Proposition 12 in order to have their pork sold in California. Let's start with Iowa native B.J. Brugman, co-founder and CEO of Distynct, a company that promises to turn your old outdated livestock alarm into smart alarm with no new wires or probes. Iowa Farm Bureau's Zach Bader had a chance to speak with BJ last month.
All right, BJ, so we're here on Matthew Burt's farm here in Marshall County, and we're here to talk about the technology that's actually inside this barn that we're standing next to right now, pig barn. That's Distynct, your company, the technology that he's using. Tell us a little bit about what is Distynct.
Yeah, Distynct is an internet-based smart alarm system, and the value proposition that we offer to livestock owners and swine producers in particular is that they can get remote visibility of their farm, have complete remote monitoring capabilities of their barns, know exactly what's going on with power in the barn, temperature fluctuations, water pressure, all those really critical things that we're monitoring in a livestock barn, and they can get all of that information right from their phone or from their computer.
Okay, so I want to get a little bit into the nuts and bolts of how that works. But first, give me a little bit about your background, about yourself and your company. I know you're the co-founder of the company. What inspired you to create it? And yeah, just give us a little bit of that background.
I grew up on a farm in northwest Iowa. The town of Royal is my hometown. That's in Clay County. I went to Iowa State, studied ag business, started with Elanco Animal Health right out of school, worked in a swine sales territory in Iowa, and then pretty quickly moved to North Carolina. So I was working with swine producers in North Carolina for the bulk of my career with Elanco, and ended up kind of getting the inspiration for Distynct through that work. We were doing a lot of data analytics work at Distynct, and it felt like real-time information from the farm was the piece that was missing. And really, if we kind of look back all the way at that, was the foundational component that was missing was internet connectivity in the farm. We started thinking, how can we get real-time data from the farm without internet connectivity? And it's really not possible. That was kind of how the Distynct Smart Alarm System started was, yes, of course, we want to be able to monitor the facility. We want to monitor those critical pieces that are important for animals, but also get internet connectivity there as kind of that base of precision livestock farming so that as we have more questions of the facility, which we know will come, it's a really simple thing to start adding devices incrementally to help us, monitor the facility more closely and continue to answer those questions.
So what kinds of things are you monitoring in the barn then?
Yeah, so today, monitoring the real critical things, as I was mentioning, power, of course, is very important. Not as much on a day like today where it's 70 degrees, but a day like yesterday where it was, 100 degrees and 99% humidity. The fans being on, moving air through those pigs, it's critical that we understand power and what's going on with the power in the facility. Temperature, so, any number of temperature sensors we're monitoring, trying to stay within that kind of predetermined threshold. We monitor water pressure and water consumption as well. Water consumption, of course, very important as we think about the health of those animals, and our customers are looking for, I think, abnormalities in water consumption. So high consumption, low consumption, all of those, of course, would be signals of maybe sickness or disease in those animals, and the producer can intervene.
Tell me a little bit about how this, in your mind, differentiates most from a farmer's traditional alarm. What are some of the key differentiators that you have there?
Yeah, I think the first piece is that getting that access to that information on your phone or on your computer and being able to see that live in real time. And that's step number one, versus some of the traditional alarm systems that have existed in the livestock industry for a very long time require, you to actually go and stand in front of the old analog system, acknowledge an alarm, enter a code. It's just pretty archaic, as we think about all the other areas of our lives where technology has entered and improved the efficiency of our work, this is one area, where digitizing the alarm system seems really, really simple to do. That is the primary driver, is getting it on your phone, getting it on your computer, being able to change settings. Again, a day like yesterday, we know that the temperature is just hot. It's just hot. And being able to continue on with your work and change those alarm parameters so you're not getting 100 calls a day when there's nothing you can do, right? That it is just going to be 100 degrees in there. And let's make sure the pigs have water. All that's visible from your phone. So from a labor efficiency standpoint, I think we differentiate ourselves there quite a bit. And then I would say, the big value proposition between, us and another alarm system that you might use is for Distynct, it's so affordable to get started. We can use the infrastructure that you already have in place on your farm. You don't have to run any new wires. You don't have to buy any new probes. Our process is really simple. We mount the Distynct connectivity engine, we call it, right next to your old alarm system. And we literally use the wires that are coming into that old system and plug them into the Distynct connectivity engine. It takes about 20 minutes and all that information will be live on your phone or your computer.
So we know that livestock farmers spend a lot of time out in the barns caring for their animals, and this obviously gives them that connection when they're not even in the barn to their animals as well. Talk us through a little bit of that and just help us explain how maybe you've got an example or two of how in your mind this helps a livestock farmer do an even better job of what they want to do naturally, which is to care for those animals and be aware of the conditions that they're in at all times.
Yeah, I have good examples almost every single week of how it improved the efficiency of an individual's daily or weekly routine. But I had an experience last year with a customer in North Carolina. In that case, a hurricane rolled through and they were monitoring power at all their sites and also able to monitor whether the generators on those sites had kicked in. And the sites they were monitoring with Distynct, they could immediately look on their phone and see at sites 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the generators are running, and these other sites we don't know. And so from an efficiency standpoint of getting to those barns where human attention or human intervention is most urgent, I think that's a huge value driver, of a system like this, because they knew all was well. We still went through a hurricane and there's still probably issues, but the power's on, the temperatures are within the desired range, the pigs have access to water. I don't know about these other sites. Let me divert my attention over there. And I think that's, from a caretaker standpoint, an extremely valuable asset.
To be able to prioritize their time and prioritize where their attention is most needed in that given moment.
Absolutely.
What kind of response have you gotten to the farmers? Obviously, we're on Matthew Burt's farm today. He's utilizing your technology. What kind of response have you gotten from the farmers about this technology? What do they really like? And then also, are there things that they've asked you about that are kind of just around the corner for you guys that you're thinking about in terms of some of this technology? Yep.
The remote monitoring piece is huge. And being able to visually see those barn conditions from your phone, of course, is massive. I think the other thing, and guys like Matthew are certainly progressive and are thinking about that next question, thinking like, what is, yes, I'm monitoring temperature, I'm monitoring power, I'm monitoring water consumption. Those things are important, but what is the next thing, the next question that I might ask? And I'm thinking about feed delivery, thinking about, feed, how do I optimize the delivery of feed from the mill? I'm managing several sites, several bins on each site. How do I work with the feed mill to make sure that one truck comes out, drops its load in one bin or two bins and leaves. So I think those are some of the other things, that we're thinking about. The other cool piece about the Distynct alarm system and the connectivity engine, the product that we sell, is we're completely hardware agnostic. Our philosophy is that innovation can't move at our pace. We can't innovate sensors and devices fast enough to keep up with the questions that producers are going to be asking. We purposely were hardware agnostic when we started, thinking that, guys like Matthew or any of our other customers will want to use someone else's device to answer the question. But if we back all the way up to kind of that first value proposition, is you got to have internet on the farm for that device to communicate. That's, I think, what's been really important for our customers. One thing they've loved is you're not trapped, inside this Distynct sensor ecosystem. You're not going to be beholden to our pace of innovation, right? I don't think Distynct will bring every device from now until eternity that will enter Matthew's barn or anybody else's barn. But Matthew has Distynct. He has the internet connection. He's got that base. And as his appetite for precision technology grows, or as he has more questions of the barn, he's going to be able to connect those devices to Distynct.
You and I were just talking a few minutes ago about how several years ago, I know you were in an American Farm Bureau entrepreneur competition. You've had different interactions with Farm Bureau over the years. Talk about maybe a little bit about the growth of your company and as an entrepreneur, the kinds of things that have helped you guys get to the stage that you're at right now.
Yeah, so we were part of the Ag Innovation Challenge in 2020, which was very, very early stage of Distynct. We actually had a different name at the time, and we were working on a different technology. We were working on some advanced technology that we thought we could use off-the-shelf cameras to identify and count pigs. That was our product at the time, and again, ran into this hurdle that no barns have internet connectivity, so that dream was dead in pretty short order, but got us to Distynct and got us to the connectivity engine and the Distynct Smart Alarm. But that was really the first foot into this entrepreneurial space. I had just kind of left my role at Elanco at that time and got some really good encouragement because of that. I met some other mentors because of that event. That was in Austin, Texas that year. And one of the funny parts about that was Justin, who's now the COO of Distynct, Justin Van Wert, who's one of my great friends, he was there working for John Deere at the time. And it was just a funny deal where he came, watched me pitch, and a couple of years later joined the team at Distynct and is the COO. So all of those things are they lucky or not? Sometimes it's just the right place at the right time. And since that competition, obviously the company's grown. We've got traction with our Smart Alarm product. We've raised outside capital. The Farm Bureau Rural Vitality Fund has been a part of that. And then it comes kind of full circle back to here on the farm with Matthew and seeing the product in action.
So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but what do you think is the next step for Distynct in your development there?
Yeah, I think, again, it kind of goes back to being hardware agnostic and sort of letting our customers drive the innovation and us sort of in that role of almost like the device kind of consultant and being the one that then can take that information, whatever that device is, and start to display that information in a useful format, just like how Matthew's using, the temperature information or the water consumption information that he was talking about earlier. Those are those kind of basic things, but starting to ratchet up then, what is that next piece of information? I think for us and what our customers are telling us is there's a lot of opportunity related to feed. And maybe not as much, in feed consumption, but a lot of efficiencies to be gained in terms of feed milling and feed efficiency. So we're looking at opportunities there and how do we help somebody like Matthew who's managing multiple sites, multiple bins, how do we help him eliminate unnecessary communications with his feed mill and make sure that, the pigs always have feed and that when a truck comes to this site, it can always empty its load.
So obviously, we're on a pig farm here today. Are there other kinds of livestock farmers out there that you think that this would be ideal for as they listen into here and start thinking about Distynct as a possibility for them? And then what would you recommend if they're interested in this kind of technology? What's the next step that you'd recommend they take?
My background is in the swine industry. My experience in the pharmaceutical industry was mostly focused on swine producers. And that's kind of just where my own network has been. But I think if you're a producer raising livestock in a confined space, this is a product for you. And a lot of those, producers are already using some kind of monitoring system, probably. And so where Distynct fits in is just as I mentioned, simply taking those wires that are coming into that old alarm system and plugging those into the Distynct connectivity engine. You can get that information digitally right from your phone. Poultry producers, I think it's a huge opportunity. Broilers or layers are using this similar kind of older alarm systems, and Distynct can be a quick upgrade. Anybody can, get more information. Our website is getdistinct.com. That's probably the first place to start, and there's a contact form on there, and we'd be happy to get you more information.
Thanks, BJ. Animal care is a 24/7 job, so it's great for farmers to have some really important information right at their fingertips and know where they can best spend their time and effort to provide the best care possible. Again, BJ's company is Distynct. That's spelled DISTYNCT. And you can learn more about them at getdistinct.com. We've also included a link to that website down in the notes for this podcast episode. Next, let's bring on Jamee Eggers, a Marshall County hog farmer and Farm Bureau member, and the new COO of Cloverleaf Animal Welfare Systems, a company that, among other things, offers farm audits and certification of compliance with California's Proposition 12. We all know that Prop 12 has been a lightning rod issue for agriculture over the past several years, but in January 2024, the requirements of Proposition 12 went into effect, leaving impacted livestock farmers with lots of questions and some difficult choices. One of those choices is whether or not to adopt Prop 12's requirements for livestock housing and to seek Prop 12 compliance. For those who find themselves in that situation, here's Jamie Eggers with Spokesman reporter Corey Munson.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jamie. To start us off, can you briefly remind us what Prop 12 is and how it impacts Iowa farmers?
California Prop 12 is a housing standard for breeding pigs, for sows, for veal calves, and for egg-laying hens. And it dictates the amount of space that is required for those groups of animals in order for the products of their offspring to be sold into the California market. So that means shell eggs, veal meat, and whole pork meat.
Okay. This has obviously been top of mind for a lot of folks for a while. So you're kind of in a unique position here in that you're a hog farmer yourself, but you're also providing audits to farms that wish to be Prop 12 compliant. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you ended up here.
I think this is a great question. It's kind of the most unique and best way I've been asked for what's your career path that led you to compliance, right? I have a bachelor's and master's degree in animal science, and I worked for the Colorado Department of Agriculture. They have a really robust licensing and inspection program for pet animals. So I did a lot of those types of animal welfare inspections and compliance inspections. Then started working for the National Pork Board, where I worked on the Common Swine Industry Audit, which is a third-party animal welfare audit and pork safety, but primarily animal welfare audit, and helped the producer and packer-led task force generate that audit. I started my own consulting company in 2023, which was the first year that we were really doing Prop 12 inspections for the state of California. And I did some contract work for Cloverleaf Animal Welfare Systems in their Prop 12 space. And then they asked me this year if I would like to join their team full time. And yeah, so I'm part of their team. We're the first certifying agent accredited by the state of California to do Prop 12 certifications across all three of the species and products.
You have a family farm. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I would be happy to. Yeah, we raise corn and soybeans. We're Farm Bureau members, of course, and corn and soybeans in Marshall County. And then we have about 150 show pig sows.
So let's talk about the process of conducting a Prop 12 audit. What is their purpose? And when an auditor visits the farm, what should a farmer expect from that?
I think the most important thing to understand is that this is a compliance audit to check that producers are meeting the regulations as stated by California. So the primary thing is, do the sows have 24 square feet each, and can they turn around freely? Then there's a lot of record keeping that's associated with that, and particularly the exceptions to when they don't have to have 24 square feet and turn around freely. So it's purely a compliance check against those regulations. And when the auditor comes to the farm, there will be primarily those two things. They're going to check all of the sows to ensure that they have the 24 square feet and can turn around freely. And for the times that they don't, they're going to check the record keeping or the business of in pork production and all of the records for the time that they're not in compliant housing.
What portions of the farm will the auditor visit?
So this is something that's a little bit different than third-party animal welfare auditing. So producers that have experienced a third-party animal welfare audit, like the Common Swine Industry Audit or something like that for their packer, they are used to a sample of the farm being audited. For Prop 12 compliance audits, the auditor is looking at all of the animals on the farm. So all of the sows, particularly, on the farm. The boars don't necessarily matter if the sow farm does have boars, but they're going to look at all of the compliant enclosures and all of the compliant animals on the farm, not just a sample of them.
And how is biosecurity concerns handled when an auditor visits?
So the biosecurity is the same as it would be for any other audit or any other type of inspection that the farm might go through. So they honor the farm's biosecurity practices. I think it's also important to note that no Prop 12 audits are unannounced. Like, they're all scheduled and everybody prepares for them. So if somebody shows up at the farm and says they're here to do a Prop 12 audit and nobody on the farm knows anything about that, that's not a legitimate Prop 12 inspection.
You recently said during Swine Day up at Iowa State that Prop 12 does not dictate how pigs are kept other than spacing requirements. But a common method of compliance is group pens or group housing. Can you describe how this setup works and tell us a little bit about the pros and cons of group housing?
So you are right. The regulations from the state of California don't say that the sows have to be kept in group housing. It simply says they have to have 24 square feet and turn around freely as the requirement. So the practical solution to that is to house them in groups. It's better utilization of the space in the farm. You could put individual sows in individual pens that have 24 square feet and can turn around freely, but that would be an incredibly hard way to manage the space on a typical sow farm. So a lot of the sow farms that are Prop 12 compliant use some type of a group housing. So that may be a pen with free access stalls. In those free access stalls, the sows can go in and out. They control the lever to shut them in the stall or not. Or they may be large pen with an electronic sow feeding system. They may use just small pens that are open with shoulder stanchions or floor feeding. Any of those housing arrangements are acceptable for Prop 12 housing as long as the sows have 24 square feet and can turn around freely. Some of the biggest challenges with that is it's more difficult to feed them individually and keep their body condition score or their body condition and their weight at a level that is important for them when you're feeding a group. Sows are very aggressive with each other in groups, or can be very aggressive with each other in groups. So you will see an increased amount of lameness and fighting, aggression towards each other in the group housing. So that's why a lot of the different iterations have been built. And then I have seen a lot of producers that are working on managing the facilities. Like when they are loading sows into those pens, they are making sure that the floor is dry so that if the sows do get aggressive and start to fight, that don't slip as much and cause as much injury or lameness. So anything can work, and group housing has its pluses and its minuses, of course. But I think it has been really, really impressive to see how the industry has adapted.
So for a farmer who is seeking a Prop 12 certification, when they call your company, Cloverleaf, what should they expect that process to look like?
Our main number at Cloverleaf Animal Welfare Systems is answered by an excellent customer success manager, and she will ask the producer a couple of questions about what type of certification they are trying to achieve. Are they only a pork producer? Or are they only an egg producer? She'll ask a bunch of questions to understand kind of what certification they're seeking, and then we'll probably very quickly respond with a couple of documents, like a contract that will explain the pricing and the responsibilities for everyone, a typical contract, then an application for services. And the application for services will ask a lot of that information. And once the producer returns those documents to Cloverleaf, we can usually get an auditor out to the farm within 10 days to 2 weeks. We have a lot of availability and flexibility, so we try to respond to those requests as quickly as possible.
As far as the charges associated with that audit, does the state of California help with those costs at all, or does that fall to the farmer?
That's a really great question. I think it's important to clarify that producers have the option of hiring a certifying agent like Cloverleaf, or they can ask the state of California to do it. If you hire a third-party certifying agent, the producer is responsible for the costs associated with the travel and auditing and the audit day. There are some situations where packers or processors are helping producers subsidize the cost of their audit. In general, the producer is responsible for the cost. If they choose to use California Department of Food and Agriculture for their on-site inspection and certification, that is free. They don't have costs associated with that, but CDFA will be very quick to say they have far less capabilities in inspectors to send people out, and they're very upfront about the fact that they probably can't get to you for 90 plus days.
So you mentioned other auditors. So other than Cloverleaf, are there other companies available to do this work?
There are other auditing companies, or certifying agents as they're called. So if you go on California Department of Food and Agriculture's website, they will list all of the third-party certifying agents available. Not all of the third-party certifying agents do all of the things. You kind of have to filter through the list a little bit. Some of them only do egg producers, for example, or some of them only do egg distributors, for example. So you just have to filter through the list, and not all of them are based in the United States at this point either. So you kind of have to read through and really find the one that is the right for you.
So if a farm is found not to be in compliance once that audit is complete, what happens then?
That's a great question. I think we'll start with the fact that it's important to know that all Prop 12 audits are pass-fail. There's no partial passing of it. So all the questions in the audit tool, you have to pass. But there's a really great but to this. All farms are either compliant or working towards compliance. So if you have what's noted as a non-conformance in your on-site inspection, let's say you're missing a piece of record keeping or something like that, that will be noted as a non-compliance, and you'll have an opportunity, typically within 90 days, to rectify the non-compliance and achieve your certification. There are some things that would require a new on-site audit. So let's say that you just completely missed the square footage thing, right? Yeah. Like the sows are at 19 square feet instead of 24 square feet. The inspector would have to go back and view that you have corrected to issue compliance. It's not if the first audit has some non-conformances noted on it, it's not the end of the world. Like you can be working towards compliance with that auditing company.
I would imagine your company and others, you have a process ahead of time that you're filling folks in on what's expected. I mean, they're not going into this process blind.
Absolutely. So as a producer, when you get the audit scheduled, at least with Cloverleaf, we will share with you ahead of time kind of a document from the state of California that says, here's what to expect during an on-site inspection. Here's the record-keeping pieces that we will be looking at. And it's not specific. It doesn't say, show me this thing. It just says, we will be reviewing records of these types, so please have them ready.
Once a farm is certified, then what requirements are there to keep that status updated?
In order to stay Prop 12 certified, you have to be re-inspected every 12 months. So when you get your initial certification, that has a 12-month expiration date on it, and you have to be re-inspected every year prior to that expiration date to keep up your certification, and that is the entire process all over again. And you can switch certifying agents if you want to. Most people have been really satisfied with the person, but you can switch auditing services if you want to, or certifying agents. So you apply, you schedule your on-site audit, and you do compliance audit that is exactly the same. There's nothing that changes or is less during the re-certification. Pay your auditing fee if you're using a certifying agent, and you do it again every year prior to that expiration date.
Have you seen any data on how many farmers in Iowa are currently certified or seeking certification?
That is a really commonly asked question, like how much Prop 12 production do we have in the United States? And we don't have any good data about that. It's all protected. Packers and Stockyards Act really protects a lot of that information. There's not like a great report that says specifically here's how much Prop 12 pork we're producing or how many farms are Prop 12 certified. You can kind of piece together some data. And, California they are selling Prop 12 compliant product at this point, and they appear to be meeting their demand. They have also noticed a drop in pork demands, largely because the pork price in California has increased significantly due to Prop 12. And you don't necessarily hear of packers or processors out there openly seeking new contracts for Prop 12 production. They're not incentivizing producers to switch to Prop 12 production at this point, which would kind of indicate that the market is satisfying the need at the moment.
Thanks, Jamie. Livestock farmers need to understand their options now that Prop 12 is in effect, and it's helpful to have someone with an extensive background in animal agriculture explaining how the Prop 12 compliance process works. If you'd like to learn more from Jamie or her company, Cloverleaf Animal Welfare Systems, we've added a link to their website down in the notes for this episode. That's all for this edition of the Spokesman Speaks podcast. We hope you found it useful. And we look forward to seeing you out at the Iowa State Fair this week for free games and great prizes at Farm Bureau Park. And we hope you'll join us for our next Spokesman Speaks podcast episode on August 26th. Thank you for doing the work that inspires everything we do here at the Iowa Farm Bureau, and thanks for listening to the Spokesman Speaks.
Thank you for listening to the Spokesman Speaks, a podcast by Iowa Farm Bureau. Check out more podcast episodes at iowafarmbureau.com/podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Spokesman Speaks podcast in the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and other popular podcast apps. We appreciate your ratings and reviews, and we welcome you to email us your feedback at podcast@ifbf.org.